In one of the most infamous diving locations of the world, a dark history lingers beneath the surface of the water. It's been the place of so many deaths that it's been named the Divers' Cemetery. This underwater realm harbors a chilling narrative of countless young divers who went in and never came back. One of the most famous accidents was that of Yuri Lipsky, and this is his tragic story.
To convulse and die.
And he asked me to recover his son.
Yuri Lipsky was a 22-year-old Russian man with an unwavering passion for the deep sea. His love for diving ran as deep as the ocean itself. He had recently gained his diving instructor qualification and, at the tender age of 22, found himself a fully certified diving instructor. Despite having explored numerous underwater wonders across the globe, Yuri's heart was captivated by one unique marvel: the mesmerizing Blue Hole. This site's strange allure and untold mysteries called to him, and Yuri viewed it as one of the most beautiful and unique places in the world. Eager to put his new skills to the test, Yuri set out for Egypt, to the location of the infamous Blue Hole. The Blue Hole is situated near the coast of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, a few miles from Dahab, the closest town. Just a few meters from the shoreline, the continental shelf quickly gives way to deep oceanic trenches that plunge thousands of feet down. The hole itself is a geological formation known as a submarine sinkhole, a vertical cavern formed over thousands of years through erosion and the collapse of limestone. It extends down to around 130 meters. One of the main features inside the hole, and often the biggest lure for divers, is the arch, a massive underwater archway that was once the entrance to this cave when it was dry long ago. The arch has a formidable reputation, luring divers deeper into extremely dangerous situations. The water in the Blue Hole is usually so clear that it creates an illusion, making things seem much closer than they are. This often causes divers to believe they can swim through the arch, when in reality, it's completely out of their reach. On top of this, most divers are recreational divers and rely on normal oxygen tanks, which can cause life-threatening problems in high-pressure environments. This site is considered one of the deadliest diving locations in the world, with a high number of fatalities over the years. It has earned the grim title, the Divers' Cemetery, and this title is well-deserved, as the lifeless bodies of some unfortunate divers still remain down there. Ironically, this title only attracts more adventurous souls, drawn by the morbid allure of the site. Over the past 15 years, the area around the Blue Hole has undergone significant urbanization due to the influx of tourists coming to see or dive in this notorious spot. This wasn't Yuri's first time visiting Dahab and the Blue Hole. He had been there a year earlier, hoping to do a deep dive into the Blue Hole.
Yuri Lipsky, yeah? Yuri, actually, I saw him not the year he died on. I saw him a year before.
However, during his 2-day stay, he was unable to find anyone willing to take him down with his current qualifications. So Yuri returned 1 year later with unfinished business, and this time he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Yuri began asking everyone he could to assist him in a deep dive into the hole. He even approached local diving legend Tarek Omar, who is probably the most experienced person when it comes to diving the Blue Hole. Living locally for most of his life, Tarek had been diving the hole for more than 20 years and had a deep connection with the site. He even held the record for the deepest dive in the area. Tarek was all too familiar with the young divers who would arrive daily at the Blue Hole, eager to dive without the necessary experience. Over the years, Tarek had lost count of how many bodies he had recovered from the seafloor of this popular dive site, but the number easily exceeded 100. Each and every one of them had been an experienced diver, yet all had underestimated the dangers lurking beneath the seemingly tranquil surface. Tarek had retrieved so many bodies from the depths that he became known ominously as the Bone Collector. But there were also plenty who sank too deep for Tarek to safely recover. The only reminder that they had died there were their names inscribed on one of the many memorial plaques dotted around the site. Tarek completely refused to take Yuri out on such short notice and without the proper experience, knowing full well what could happen to even qualified divers in the Blue Hole. But Yuri was determined, and just 40 minutes later, he found another guide who he convinced to take him down into the Blue Hole. Yuri began putting on his gear, checking his oxygen tank, securing his camera in an underwater case, and running through some final checks before the dive. He was acutely aware of the conditions awaiting him, and all the pertinent information was programmed into his diving computer, ready to be viewed at any time. With this crucial piece of equipment, he could monitor his depth, the amount of air remaining in his tank, and the amount of time the dive should take. As he entered the water and the camera started rolling, everything seemed to be going well. Still close to the surface, Yuri saw divers below him coming up to finish their dive. Yuri and his dive buddy signaled that all was good, and then Yuri began his descent, alone. Confident in his abilities as a diving instructor, he believed he would be fine on his own at lower depths. During the descent, Yuri was so distracted by the camera and likely suffering from minor narcosis that he completely forgot to check his descent rate. Whether he realized it or not, he was plummeting down at an uncontrolled rate, 30 meters every minute, until eventually the dark water below gave way to the seafloor. Yuri couldn't believe what he was seeing and frantically began to check his diving computer for the first time since starting his descent. Just a few moments later, Yuri crashed into the seabed 93 meters down. The average oxygen tank can last around 30 to 60 minutes during recreational dives, but at such low depths, the numbers can drop to mere seconds. The gas molecules become so densely packed from the pressure of the water that a diver can use up their remaining air in just a few breaths. But these final breaths are completely toxic. As the high concentration of molecules enters the bloodstream, it causes nitrogen narcosis, which is a physiological, anesthetic response that occurs in the brain. It can leave divers in a drunk-like, disoriented state, which often ends in fatality, especially when alone in a dangerous environment. As Yuri felt his dwindling air supply and the foggy confusion of narcosis, panic began to set in. He desperately tried to inflate his BCD, buoyancy control device, but he was far too deep for this to work, especially with all the heavy diving equipment weighing him down. Yuri frantically stumbled around on the seabed and, in a last desperate attempt to inflate his vest manually, removed his regulator and gave the vest his final breaths of air. But it was hopeless. Yuri drowned, alone, deep down, almost at the bottom of the Blue Hole. Yuri's father arrived in Dahab the very next day, in disbelief. He had just gone swimming with Yuri a few days before, and now his son was gone. He remembered Yuri telling him that he would never take unnecessary risks when diving. Yuri's father asked Tarek Omar if he could retrieve his son's body. Tarek agreed, telling him he would need 2 days, one to check the location and condition of the body, and the second day to retrieve it. So, on the second day, Tarek and his dive buddy began their slow descent into the hole. They were both using Trimix, which is exactly what is required for these kinds of deep dives. As the name suggests, Trimix is a mixture of 3 different gases: oxygen, nitrogen, and helium. When correctly combined, Trimix allows divers to breathe longer and reach much deeper without being poisoned by their air supply. Tarek tied Yuri's body to a rope, which was pulled to the surface where Yuri's family was waiting. Tarek and his buddy resurfaced long after the body had been removed due to their mandatory decompression stops. After her son's funeral, Yuri's mother flew back out to Dahab to place a plaque with Yuri's name on the wall, where he would join the countless others who had ventured too deep into the blue hole. There are few places in the world where you can take a couple of steps from the road and fall into an endless chasm of water. But at Dahab's blue hole, that's exactly what it's like. It's as if Mother Nature herself has created the perfect trap for divers, a trap that continues to lure people to their deaths to this very day. Thank you for joining me on this episode of True Horror. If you did enjoy this episode, be sure to click that subscribe button and consider watching the next video.